Sage is one of the best Sonic characters in decades, and is emblematic of the improvements made to the game's writing after the flops of Forces and TSR. Her popularity is in no small part due to her intriguing character arc, growing from an emotionless AI assistant of Eggman, simply one of thousands of machines and software programs he's created over the years, to the closest thing the mad scientist has to a child, as they both come to understand the nature of the familial bond that was never supposed to be. It's really intriguing stuff and is one of the most unique storylines to come out of the franchise, and I'm so happy to see that Sage and her character development made it into Crossroads. It's further proof that in this new era of Sonic, every new story can build off of and impact those that came before and after it, something that hadn't been the case for a long time. Unfortunately, I can't speak quite as positively about Sage's appearance in SRB2. That all-important growth into the caring child who came to love her father despite his inhumanity and despicable nature? Practically gone. Once again, she's nothing more than an avatar for an Imperial software package in what is an uncharacteristic turn from Light Dasher, who is usually the master at imbuing their characters with so much life. The character is a lot of fun once you can get past the steep learning curve, and clearly a lot of work went into this one, but I struggle to ascertain whether that makes up for what Sage is missing: her personality. Designing a moveset for Sage must have been quite difficult when the closest she's come to being playable is piloting Supreme in a 2.5D SMUP. I don't envy Light Dasher or their team for having to do this, but I think they made a strong decision in choosing to ignore that and instead look at how she acts as an NPC. She teleports everywhere, she permanently hovers in the air, and she's constantly glitching, and so these three elements would go on to be the basis of her three abilities. Phase is the most important one, and adapts all of her teleporting. It is basically just Shadow's Chaos Snap. The inputs needed to teleport up and down are the most obvious testaments to that, albeit a lot more disorienting, as there's no animation or camera movement between you and your destination. The jump is instantaneous, and the camera hard cuts to stay at the same distance behind you. You've just got to get used to that, as it's only the first of many hurdles you'll need to overcome to play as Sage. By itself, the phase is pretty mediocre with its limited range, but combine it with a little something called the transfer beam, and you'll suddenly find yourself reaching new heights. There's a lot to this one, so I'll let you discover some of its intricacies yourself, but effectively the transfer beam is a chargeable projectile that infects enemies with a virus. If fired without charging, the virus takes a few seconds to destroy the enemy, but if spin is held for a second or two, the enemy is destroyed instantly. The relationship with phase is what really makes the beam though, because the virus acts as a waypoint that lets Sage teleport to a projectile or infected enemy, immediately so the beam was charged, but acts as a springboard and resets phase, massively increasing its effectiveness and instantly improving Sage's viability. Get the hang of aiming the beam in the air, and you will need to practice because its homing capabilities are either lacking or entirely non-existent, and you'll barely touch the ground again, instead jumping between infected enemies like a computer worm set loose in a vulnerable network. And it's a good thing to try and avoid having to travel via basic ground movement, as we come to Sage's final ability. This is called Anti-Gravity, and it's a passive ability designed to provide a unique gameplay element to Sage's constant hovering. All too often, you'll play as a character whose run animation clearly portrays them as hovering a few inches above the floor. Aether is who immediately springs to my mind, only for them to still be vulnerable to floor hazards like the electrified grids of Techno Hill or the patches of Thorns in Castle Eggman. I never really thought about how odd that was, but clearly Light Dasher did, because there's a whole mechanic related to that here. Essentially, once you transition between your walking and running animations, Sage's hitboxes lift up a few inches, and you visually and mechanically, begin to float. That has the obvious effect of making you immune to all floor hazards, but it has a lot of other effects too. You can travel across the surface of water like this, you no longer trigger triggers for certain traps, and you can use a form of coyote time and jump long after running off a platform. That last point is very useful for Sades. Obviously, because this has all been expanded into a full ability, Light Asa would have considered all of the ramifications of having Sades float above the ground when moving, and as anyone who has ever done basic physics would know, this would include a lack of friction. Friction is a very important aspect of stopping quickly, and so because the ground offers no resistance against her, Sades is terrible at coming to a halt. What this means is that she is a very slippery character, far more of one than any other character I can remember playing as, and so she'll be running off cliffs quite often. This is the biggest hurdle that you need to overcome as Sades. I may not be entirely happy with how she turned out, but that's mostly due to factors outside of the moveset. Yet if you were to go back to my original set of notes, you'd see that I was tearing it apart. I was throwing a fit, saying some really overblown stuff about how amateur and messy she was. On the ground, she plays as if she's at an ice rink, but take to the air and the hard cuts will make you sick. As is usually the case though, all I needed to do to come around on a complex character was to go to sleep, wake up refreshed, put in a few more hours, and suddenly, it clicks. I started to come at the character on their terms, and put more stock into practicing their basics, and then I finally begin to have fun. That downtime in respite is absolutely necessary with Sades, because phase and the transfer beam and anti-gravity individually would be quite a lot to get to grips with as a single ability in someone else's arsenal, so having to figure out how to use all three of them in tandem at the same time is pretty overwhelming. Trying to do crazy stuff with them off the bat isn't going to go well, and it's only with time and practice that they begin to slot together. A lot of the stuff that I was going to point to as a flaw just faded into the background as I got better, and so I implore you, if you tried out Sage for an hour or so and ended up dropping her out of frustration, go back to her with a fresh mind. Practice aiming the transfer beam against some slow-moving badniks. Figure out how far the face can travel in any given direction. She's an investment compared to most characters, to be sure, but since I've gone past the difficulty spike, I can look back and say that it was worth it. Just keep at it. You'll want to put in the time to learn how to play Sage, but there's another big time sink that I recommend you just ignore as her, and that's collecting the Chaos Emeralds. I'd give the same advice for most characters, to be honest, as very few superforms live up to the work needed to unlock them, but it feels particularly pertinent here, because Sage does get so close to trying something unique. Most people are going to be aware of the evolution of Sage's design, whether that be from playing Frontiers or just seeing that she looks different in Crossworlds. She starts off with a black and red colour scheme, which is what is represented here. Then as she gathers more data and develops more emotions, she begins to glitz and use an inverted white and blue colour scheme, until her arc reaches its crescendo and that becomes a permanent appearance. Without an official superform to work with, unless like Dasa wanted to try and work something out with Supreme, it'd be a fantastic placeholder design. And it looks like they were going for that. Until I saw this. What is this? You were on the verge of a slam dunk just to ruin it at the final, completely avoidable moment. Beyond that blunder, there's not much more to talk about. As far as I can gather, you have all of the usual superform traits and your abilities are all buffed. The main talking point here should have been how they used Sage's alternate design in a very clever manner, but because that was fumbled entirely unnecessarily, it's a superform no better or worse than any others. Fine, but not worth the effort to unlock legitimately. I was quite negative about Sage in my introduction, yet so far, many of my complaints have been minimal. I liked her moveset and implored that struggling players just get good. I thought an easy home run was missed with her super form, but ultimately thought it to be fine. So what's the problem? Well, a certain amount of the appeal of a light Dasa mod is, in my view at least, how much of a character's personality they're able to fit into a limited sprite list. The life imbued in their idle animations and their basic movements. Whether it's Tango's exuberant, energetic nature, or Whisper's more stoic and analytical accents, so much is added to them in just a few pixels. The movesets are usually strong and the technical ability on display is always impressive, but I think that it's this accuracy to the source material that gets me, and I'm sure many others, to rush to a new Light Dash mod upon its release. That's why it's such a shame that I don't see these same flourishes with Sage. There are no idle animations, no edge animations, not much of a continue animation. Indeed, it feels like at every turn where there was an opportunity to imbue Sage with some life, there was a decision made to actively avoid doing so. Now, you might turn around and argue that Sage isn't an emotional character. She doesn't have the big personality of extroverts like Surge or Tangle, and she hides her thoughts and feelings more, so it'd be out of character for her to react much to things. And you'd be right. She doesn't express herself much. But do you know who else is like that? Whisper. And her subdued nature was captured perfectly without making her look like she was simply an emotionless husk. Give Sage an idle animation where she considers her next steps. Change her hit animations to look more anguished. Make her look a little angrier when using the transfer, be more sorrowful when using a continue. Heck, give her some voice lines. Surge uses clips from Jury, so it's not like Light Dasher is against using them. As it stands, I think there's been a bit of a misunderstanding about what kind of character Sage is. If I had to guess solely off of this mod, I would have assumed she was some sort of a sad emo. And for a character whose emotional growth is so paramount to her appeal, that's a bigger hit than it'd be for many others. But for as much as this is a big deal, let's try and end this review on a positive note. The quality of Sage's sprite work is undeniable and plain to see, and expresses itself in myriad ways. I could point to any number of things. The glitch effects, the luminosity of the reds on the sprites themselves, the huge number of particle effects layered on top of themselves, but I think the footage speaks for itself. Or maybe it doesn't, because SRP2 seems to really suffer from YouTube's bitrate compression, but trust me, it's good stuff. I particularly like how the death animation shows the original Sage device fall away, which isn't something I would have remembered or thought about, and it should be noted that there is a great deal of available control to customize Sage's colours, far beyond that of most characters. I may dislike the direction taken, but it is undeniable that the execution of those flawed concepts is incredible. I said it up top. I've said it throughout the review. My opinions have not changed. Sage is a very fun character, albeit one that demands a degree of effort to understand. If you take the time to learn how phase and the transfer beam work, you'll have a lot of fun and be able to pull off some sweet maneuvers. The superform is passable, perfectly fine, just like 90% of superforms in the game, but done with such a perfunctory execution that I only mention it in the review in the interest of comprehensiveness. Okay, and maybe also to mock the hair. I don't understand why you'd commit to an idea like this and then entirely avoidably mess it up like this. Even when talking about sprites, I think that they're incredible on a technical level and in matters of execution. My complaint isn't to do with any of that. Rather, it's that despite all of this good work, I don't feel like I'm truly playing as Sage. I've grown accustomed to Light Daster being able to embellish their characters with so much of their personality despite SRB2's limitations, and for whatever reason, I just don't think that's the case here. The best way that I can put it is like this. Light Daster and their team has done a fantastic job of making Sage look like Sage, but has done a comparatively poor job of making Sage feel like Sage. Hopefully you all understand what I mean by that. I can see this being a contentious opinion, but I'll stand by it. Play the mod and have a lot of fun if you're willing to put in a few hours of practice, but if you're a Sage superfan, you might still find yourself a little disappointed. Anyway, I hope that you all enjoy the video, and I'll see you in the next one. But for now, ciao.